Hello, 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 folks. I hope everybody's having a great Sunday. We're going to get started here in about 1 minute and 30 seconds. Welcome, welcome, everybody. Hope you're having a great weekend so far. We're going to get started soon. Let me know if you can hear me okay, if my volume level's okay, if the music isn't too loud. Feel free to let me know. Great to have y'all here. Hey, Copper Lily. Thank you, Hearst. Good to see ya. Hey, Agrabenia. Good to see you again. Welcome back. I'm going to get started here in just a few seconds. Welcome in, everybody. Alrighty. The timer has counted down, so it is time to start. Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome. I hope everybody's having an excellent weekend. Good to see you all. Yeah, we're going to have a super fun project today. I hope you're as excited for it as I am. Hey, Renee, it's good to see you. Got a nice fresh cup of tea here. I'm going to hydrate real quick. There we go. Alrighty, how's everybody doing? Oh, and first off, too, first things first, I wanted to thank a couple of folks, Amethyst354 and Psy8. They both subscribed with their Amazon Prime accounts a few days ago. So they thought they could slip in under the wire while I wasn't live, but I saw you. So thanks again, Amethyst354 and Psy8. I really appreciate it. And they subscribed with Prime, so it didn't cost them any money, which I appreciate even more. What I appreciate even more than the love you guys show me is when you're able to do it for free. That's the best part. Hey, Crispy Nugget, how's it going? How you doing? Hey, Iced Fire. What are these words of magic? Markdown, TypeScript, Vite, Marked. Yeah, so we're going to talk about what all of those things are today. And all that vocabulary might sound a little bit daunting, but it really isn't. And that's the cool part, is that a lot of this stuff is really not that complex. And actually, this whole project that we're going to do today is only going to be so styling aside, right? Forget about the CSS. We're going to have to add some CSS. But as far as like the actual code logic, one file, one singular file is going to do everything that we need to do today. One single file is going to do everything that we need to do. We're only going to be editing one file, and it's not even that long. Oh, and I realized what I forgot is I forgot to set up MooBot with the project, so you guys have access to the repo. Give me just 1 second. I'm going to set up my bot with the link to the GitHub repo so you can call it at your leisure. One moment. Of course, I got to log in again. I cleared my cookies yesterday, and I did not think about the repercussions that it would log me out of everything. So, yeah. Give me just a moment. Hey, Inner Planet. Weather's been fantastic. That's good. Chris, you don't have to be specific, but are you in the southern US? I'm just curious when you mentioned heat, because it's not been warm where I live, so I'm genuinely curious. Almost done updating that project. Alrighty, and the repo is here, which, like I said, once again, you'll be able to call that in just a moment. Alrighty, I've updated the bot. It is saving now. So now you should be able to use exclamation point project in chat to get a link to the finished code in the repo. It will also post automatically in chat every 5 minutes. There you go, Icefire, you got it. Oakleus, welcome. Yes, I am in the Midwest, and it's been very cold. I do not do well with cold weather, but East Coast got some warm weather. Okay, yeah, maybe that's it then. Hey, Interplanet, good to see you. Oop, sorry about that. I just got a text. Oh, it's from my friend. And my friend sent me a picture of a kitten, so I'm going to need to see what that's all about during the break, but it's a pretty cute kitten. Cold, but it warmed up this weekend. Yeah. Kitty, I know. Yeah. They sent me a picture. I think they knew I'd like that. So now my interest is peaked. I'll be looking at that during our first break. All right, but anyway, what are we building today? What are all these strange words that I was posting about in the tweet and in the stream notification? What is all this about? So what we've built today is basically a live preview tool that lets you preview markdown text as you type it. So while you're typing, you get to see live what your markdown is going to look like. And hey, KevDev, good to see you again. How's it going? And so you might ask, okay, but what is Markdown? What is that for? Well, if you've ever looked at a GitHub repo, such as the repo for this particular project, which you can get to again by using exclamation point project, if you click on the README file, you'll notice that it has some fairly lovely styling, right? Got some nice, it looks pretty nice. It's got headers, it's got a little list down here. Looks pretty decent, right? But if you actually look in the repo itself, if you were to clone that repo down, what you would find is, and I'm going to pull over the finished product here just to show you. Sorry, that's kind of small. That's how I edit things. But if you actually look inside here, you'll see that it looks pretty different. Bigger. It uses little symbols here to essentially create the formatting, right? So for the headers, it uses, for the main header here, it uses a hashtag or a pound sign, depending on how old you are. And for the second header, it uses 2 pound signs or hashtags. And then for the list, it uses dashes, right? Or octothorpe if you want to get fancy. Yes, so this is also called an octothorpe. You can call it a pound sign, hashtag, octothorpe. Although octothorpe is a pretty excellent word, I would agree. And then for the list items, it uses little dashes here, right? And in a markdown file, when it renders out here, that actually gets translated into formatting, which is pretty cool. And you'll see Markdown used a lot in GitHub repos for their READMEs. If you look at the README for pretty much any you know semi-professional project on GitHub, you'll find that the README uses Markdown to make it, to give it some styling and formatting. So Markdown is a pretty versatile tool. And I have a little website here that I would recommend if you want to learn more about Markdown. It's right here. It's called markdownguide.org. And I'm actually going to drop this in chat so you all can take a look. Spam it here. There you go. And essentially what this is just kind of a cheat sheet for how you do these various types of formatting. Markdown, lowdown. Yeah, exactly. And basic syntax is pretty straightforward, and most people are only really going to be using the basic syntax. And you might also see Markdown being used on Discord as well. You'll find that Discord actually supports Markdown. You can do bold, you can do italic, you can create lists and do all these things in your Discord chats. So if you want to, if you're kind of doing a long post or explaining something to somebody on Discord, you can use Markdown to add formatting to the text and make it more readable. And you can even do things like creating hyperlinks, like they've done here. So you put the link text here, and then you put the address here in the parentheses. and then images. So really, it's the same thing as a hyperlink, except you add an exclamation point. Yeah, it is cool, isn't it, Icefire? Yeah, because it's a much simpler way of formatting text than something like HTML, right? And what you'll find is that some tools and interfaces or websites or whatever where you can make posts or enter text, some will actually support both. Some will support both HTML and Markdown, so you can use either one. Discord itself does not support HTML, I believe. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that Discord does not support HTML. It only supports Markdown. Um, and then, as Dr. Moto said, Reddit uses Markdown too. Yeah, exactly. You sometimes see people don't know that you have to line break twice to get it to show. Yeah, so a common mistake that folks make when they're posting on Reddit, because they don't know that they're using Markdown, is that they will hit enter once and think that they're getting a new paragraph, but in Markdown to get a new paragraph, you hit enter twice. And so yeah, I myself have made that mistake. Hey Leo, it's good to see you again. I hope you had a good week. Interplanet says, nice. I use a OneNote alternative called Joplin, and it uses Markdown, so I'm excited to see this today. Yeah, yeah. And we're going to be. It's not so much our what we're building today is not so much about practicing Markdown itself. It's basically just giving us a sort of a Markdown sandbox. But once you build this tool that we're going to build today, you can use it to test out any kind of Markdown that you want. So like what I mentioned before is that you'll see most people just using the very basics of Markdown, which is perfectly fine. But there's also some extended syntax that you can use as well. You can even build tables, which is maybe more effort than it's worth, but you can. You can build tables. You'll see that people on Discord will often do this. They'll build what's called a fenced code block, so you can put ticks around a block of code, and it'll put it in an actual code block, which is really useful. You can do footnotes, you can create heading IDs, you can do definition lists, you can do strike throughs, you can do task lists with like check marks, um, highlights, emojis. You might see emojis, especially on Reddit. You'll see emojis being used this way, subscripts and superscripts. Hey, Quad Shot, good to see you again. You're my flipping here. Oh, yeah, Markdown I didn't know about Markdown for the longest time, or I didn't know what it was. And once you start using it, you'll find that it's really, really useful and versatile for a lot of situations. So many sites support it. And if even you don't have to worry about all this extended stuff necessarily, but just knowing the basics, like how to do bold and italics and lists, that's in embed images, like that'll get you pretty far, pretty much. Renit says, do we need anything to be installed / registered today to follow along? Not yet. We're going to be setting up our project here in just a minute. Right now, I'm just giving a sort of an introduction to Markdown, but all of the stuff we're going to be setting up today is going to be installed within VS Code. So if for anybody following along out there, as long as you have VS Code or a similar code editor with Node and NPM installed, you'll be able to follow along today. Yeah. Oh, that's a great point, Esther. I like that. So they say task lists are really useful for doing to-dos in GitHub. Yeah. So if you have a project in GitHub and you're keeping track of like progress on the project in a README, you can use this task list syntax to, create a task list and check them off as you do them. And what I really like about this website is that if you want more information on any particular format, you can click on it and it takes you to a whole page which gives you a lot more information about how to use it, how not to use it, all those sorts of things. So I'm going to post this in chat one more time, this URL here. So you have it, and I would suggest referring back to this whenever you want to try out Markdown on your own GitHub repos. And that's a great way you can make your GitHub repos look so much nicer. You can really create good READMEs. I actually wrote the README for today's repo in our tool that we're going to build because I wanted to see how it looked beforehand. So I wrote it in the tool we're going to build today. Copper Lily says, I use it in Trello, but I don't know all the tricks. Yeah, it works in so many places. And this website will hopefully give you a little bit of a reference guide so you can maybe make it look even better. Yeah. All right. So what are we going to be building today? Let's take a look at that. Now that we know what Markdown is, let me go back to, here we go. So this is the tool we're actually going to build. So in the left box, you can write, if I type plain text, it's like this, it appears as plain text on the right. And I can actually zoom in a little bit more to make that even bigger. There we go. But then if I start adding some markdown, so for example, make this a header too, it applies the markdown formatting. Same for something like, you know, bold or italics. Let's see, I think the doubles is, this is italic, right? I think. Yeah. I always get the bold and italic mixed up. Italic, we'll see. And then as soon as I close the format, right, as soon as I added that closing star, then it turned it italic. And this is bold. And then you can even do things like embedding images. So I have an image ready to go here. So if I paste in the image here, you've got the alt text in square brackets, and then you can paste the URL to the image, and it'll display over here on the right. Okay. All right. So any questions? Oh, and last thing here, probably the most important feature. Let's say you were using this to build a README for your project, right? You're done with it. And yeah, I mean, you could grab this, you could do a, Control A and copy it, right? To paste it into your README, or you could just click this button and export it. So you can see it downloaded it up here in my download list. And then, you can just click on it, open it up in VS Code and save it onto your project. So we've got you can free entry, you can get it looking exactly how you want. And then when you're done, you can simply export it and it'll be saved in your downloads folder, and then you can save it in your project. Okay? Any questions on this before we get started? Like I mentioned before, if you're just joining us, this is really just a single file of code, which I think is pretty cool. We're going to be making use of a couple of packages that are really going to help us build this in an efficient way. And we're also going to be using TypeScript and React and Vite today as our tools. Copper Lily says, I think this might be my favorite non-cat themed project so far. Wow, okay. Yeah, I know how much you like cats, so that's an honor. That really is. I'm glad this is really fun for me to build, so I hope it's just as fun for you guys. All right. So for our project tool today, I mentioned we're going to be building it using React, and normally we would, set up a React project with something like create React app, right? But there's another tool that I've used several times here on the stream, and anytime I don't use it, people are all up like, why aren't you using it? And that particular tool is Vite. So Vite is essentially just another bundler, kind of like Create React App, very similar, except for I've found that it's often more streamlined and a little bit easier to use. It gives you a little bit less bloatware, how when you do Create React App, and it gives you a bunch of extra files and a bunch of extra junk that in your project, and you just have to go through and delete it all every single time. Vite still does a little bit of that, but it's less of it. And it also, I think, builds the project a lot faster, and it gives you more options on what tools you use and how you want to build your React project. So I generally use one or the other, Create React App or Vite, but today we're going to be using Vite for this particular. Vite Gang Risa, yeah. Mattel says, is that a Thundercat, or are you talking about this here? It's actually the Green Lion from Voltron, the Netflix Voltron series. Because on Discord and many other places, my avatar is Pidge, the Green Lion pilot from Voltron. I'm quite a fan of Netflix's Voltron series, and so Pidge is kind of my inspiration, I guess, a little bit. And so yeah, that's the Green Lion is pretty darn cool, I think. Kev says, woohoo, React. I was just watching your React VODs today. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, if you're new to React, You should be able to follow along today. Like I said, it's only one file of code. So if you're new to React, you should be able to follow along. But if you want to, start React from the ground up, I do have a 7 or 8 part series going through the React docs from beginning to end. So starting at ground zero and then building up your React skills to the point where you can actually build stuff. So that's on my YouTube channel. If you're interested in that, you can check it out. Exclamation point YouTube to get a link to my YouTube channel. Ultron, yeah. All right. So feel free to ask questions at any point. If you're new to my streams, I'm definitely open to questions. Also, please do code along with me. That's kind of the deal. If you're able to code along, a lot of folks listen to me while they're making dinner or whatever, and so that's perfectly fine. But if you're in front of your computer, feel free to code along. And when you're done, you'll have your own version of this project that you can use something else with it. Yeah, and also if you would like or if you want or need closed captioning, you can turn those on by hovering your mouse toward the right side of your viewing window. That's over here for you guys, right over there. Um, and you can, there should be a little closed caption icon that shows up, and you can enable closed captioning that's auto generated. Esther says, we are going to use React Router. Nope, not this time because the project is so small, we don't actually need a router. So, all right. Oh, hey, Quantum. Welcome to the stream. Quantum says, do you think projects similar to this counts having on GitHub while searching for a dev job? It depends on how you use it. So a lot of folks ask that. They're like, what project should I have on my GitHub? What should I put, front and center to showcase my skills? And simpler projects like this are fine. But what you should do is you should make sure that they reflect something unique about you, right? Like instead of just a to-do list, right? Because the tutorials are always to-do lists. It's everything's a to-do list. But instead of just a to-do list, turn it into something that's relevant, relevant to you. So let's say maybe you are really into motorcycles or something like that. You could turn that to-do list into like a part picker for a motorcycle. So or repair list for motorcycle maintenance, where people can go down common repairs and check the things off as they repair them, or servicing your motorcycle. Did you do these things at the 1 year mark? Did you do these things at every month? That kind of thing, and people can check that off. So that's an example of turning a fairly simple template, something like a to-do list, into something that is really tailored to your interests and reflects who you are as a person and is kind of unique and interesting. So something like this Markdown live previewer, this could be maybe not. I would see this maybe being part of like a larger page or a larger application that you build, where this is one small part of it. Maybe you build a Markdown guide. Maybe you do that. Maybe you build a guide with like those little cheat sheet tips and tricks like we just talked about before. And then down at the bottom, you have a little like Markdown tester, where folks can play around in the sandbox, which is literally this that we're going to build. So it's all about how you spin it, right? You can still have simple things in your portfolio. Not everything has to be complex, but what matters is that you make it unique and relevant to you as a person. Okay. Quantum says, I'd probably go for data visualizations on maps or of data. Yeah, and visualizations are fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But you have to think about, can I actually do it? Can I speak about what I've done? And can I be passionate about the things I have on my GitHub? Okay. And Esther says, I like movies, so I'm doing a movie page with TMDB API. There you go. They like movies, so that's something that's fun for them. And so that shows who they are as a person. And so that's a great project. Yeah. And as Chris said, and you can also curate your projects and resumes respective to specific jobs and technologies you're looking into. Absolutely. Yep. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Over here, a little smaller. Alrighty. So I already have a folder here that I've created for this project. And I'll go ahead and open the terminal. A little bigger. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm obviously going to initialize npm here. So I'll say npm init-y. And if you didn't remember, the -y here is just so that I can skip all those little prompts that it always gives you every single time. All right, I've done that and I've initialized my NPM. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to install Vite. Once again, this is very similar to how you would do something like create React app. It's just another kind of it's another newer, more modern bundler. So in order to do that, and I'll paste this in chat, but you'll do npm create Vite at latest. Okay. And I'll drop this in chat. Actually, I'm here. Okay, so that's what you're going to type after you do your npm init -y. Then you're going to do npm create Vite at latest. Okay. And once I hit enter, you'll see it's going to start building my project. Oh, and actually, first thing it's going to do is it's going to ask for a project name. So if you start typing, you can name your project whatever you want. I'm going to name mine Markdown Checker. And so that's the first question. So I'll hit enter. And then it's going to ask you to select a framework. So what we're going to be using today is React, and you can use the arrow keys to move up and down. So you see how I'm able to move up and down the list using the arrow keys? And so I'm going to settle on React and then hit enter. And then for our variant, I'm going to use TypeScript. So you can just pick the first option there. This is the first TypeScript option. And there we go. It's built the project. So it only took what, half a second to actually generate all the files. And if we open this folder here, we can see it's given us everything that we need to create our project. So unlike Create React App, which takes, I don't know, maybe 30 seconds to build everything out, Vite takes half a second maybe to build the whole thing. So let me know where you guys are at. I can go through the steps again if you need me to. Just let me know once you have your sort of your boilerplate Vite template set up. So fast. I know it is pretty fast, isn't it? While you guys are doing that, Quantum asks, what do you think is a good balance between size and quantity of projects? I mean, they shouldn't be just like you just want it to show a good, you want your GitHub to be curated. So you should probably have a small number of projects, only the ones that you feel reflect um, you as like in your portfolio, like the ones that you really want to show off to a recruiter. You can do multiple pushes, to GitHub and get those green squares, right? But the ones that you have front and center should be the ones that really reflect your skills and who you are. Popularly says, which TypeScript is it? You can just do the plain TypeScript variant. You don't have to do the SWC. There's like two options. You have TypeScript and SWC. Just do the TypeScript one. So React, our framework is React. Our variant is TypeScript. Okay. KevDev says, do you recommend not to do Create React App? I do it all the time here on stream. I do them both. I've done Vite, I've done Create React App. I usually alternate. So one React project I'll do Create React App, the other one I'll do Vite. But out of the two, I would have to say I prefer Vite, just because it is faster and it installs less junk that you don't need. So, but there's nothing wrong with doing either one. You'll see tons of people still using Create React App. Lots of tutorials use Create React App. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. Oh, thank you so much for the sub, Drunk Uncle Grandma. I always love seeing you here. Thank you so much. Oh boy, thank you so much for the sub once again. Yeah, great. Always great having you here. Appreciate your sense of humor and your contribution to the chat. Esther says better for deployment. I think. Yeah, Vite is often touted as being much faster. Oh, always appreciate having you here. Yeah, Vite is touted as being, it's more modern, it's faster, all those sorts of things. So, I mean, if you're really serious about building React apps, you'd probably want to use Vite, but either one is fine. All right, so how are we doing? Has everybody got their, is everybody to this point where they've got their template created? Because if so, then we're going to start installing some stuff. All right, good. Seeing some yeses. If you need more time, that's okay. You're allowed to say so. I'm just trying to get a gauge of where we're at. We serious? All good. Okay. All right. So now is once it's done building, it tells you exactly what to do. So the first and most important thing to do is CD into your new folder that was created. Mine's called Markdown Checker. So I've CD'd into that. And then I'm going to do npm install to install the things that Vite added. And then we're going to install a couple other packages, but we're going to start with these. So just do npm install, go through that. And then once we're done with that, we'll just do npm run dev and make sure that everything is set up correctly, which I'm sure it will be. You can see it's installing the packages that we need, and it's done. All right, so now we can just do npm run dev like it's telling us to, just to make sure it works. All right, and we are up and running. Look at that. There we go. So this just brings up a boilerplate template and a nice little clicky button just to tell you that everything's working. Right? Oh, running on the same localhost, so I lost my lost the finished version. That's all right. Okay, so we can go ahead and stop this for now because we're gonna have to install a couple other things. So I'll close this. Goobrick says, I wish that I had your internet speed. Yeah, that's why I like to check in with folks and see how far along they are. I'm lucky enough to have a fiber gigabit internet where I live, but I know that a lot of folks don't have that luxury. So, and I have a wired connection to my computer as well, so pretty blazing fast. Um, so I like to make sure I pause and let folks have a minute to get up and running. Okay. So, like I mentioned, um, the deal says, is it like obsidian that you're making? Um, Not quite sure I understand the question. We're just using TypeScript and React and Vite today to build an application. I'm not familiar with if Obsidian is a framework. I'm not familiar with it, but feel free to enlighten us if you want. You wired your home. You wired your whole home years ago, so worth it. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I actually have a wire that's going, like my router is just over there, and so I have a wire that's literally like just going along the floor and then kind of like awkwardly curving up into the back of my computer. So yeah, it's not wired in the sense that it's looks good or is professional, but it is wired. Oh, Obsidian's like OneNote and it's all Markdown. Okay, yes, we are building a Markdown preview tool today, so yes, there is Markdown involved. Mhm. You have 4 other Vite projects open. Wow. Hey, Fuel, good to see you. All right, so next up, we're going to install a couple more packages. So we're going to install two additional packages. Because if we look inside of our package.json, we can see it's installed a couple things. It's installed, sorry, this one here. It installs two package.jsons. So you want to make sure you're going to this one, which is actually inside the project folder. So go right here. You'll see it's installed a couple of dependencies, one for React and one for React DOM. We're going to install a couple more things. So first, we're going to install Marked, which is a Markdown package. What it does is it takes, plain text with Markdown symbols and it translates it into actual formatted Markdown. Gubrick says, first time using Vite, a new localhost is open. Is this correct? Yeah, that's fine. As long as you got that little test page, as long as you opened up in your browser and you saw the little test page with a little spinny icon, then you're good to go. Oh, you talked at a conference recently, Fuel. That's awesome. What conference was it? So we're going to install two packages. We're going to install Marked, which is for Markdown. Then we're also going to install another one called DOM Purify, which none of you have probably used before. But this serves a very important purpose, and we'll talk about it in a little bit. But first off, let's get it installed. So two things, Marked and DOM Purify. Those are our two packages. So we'll go ahead and install those. All right. And now the next thing we're going to do NPMI Dom Toretto. Oh, and I'll post this in chat as well. What the names of those two packages were. So those are the two packages we installed. Minute to do that. Oh, Fuel, that's cool. You did a .NET conference. That's awesome. I'm just starting to learn .NET. Started out with Visual Basic to maintain some existing tools that work, but I'm learning C# because that seems to be the future of .NET. So just built my first app in C# last week. So I'm pretty proud of that. Built my first working Windows app in C# last week. You're done. Okay, awesome. All right. Now the next thing we're going to do is since we're using TypeScript, we're going to also install the type libraries for both of these packages. Because in TypeScript is what's called a typed language. It's or a strongly typed language. Whenever you are declaring variables or introducing functions or anything like that, you give each element a specific type, such as strings, numbers, arrays, whatever. It gives a little bit of it sort of tamps down on the chaos a little bit of JavaScript. So TypeScript is essentially just JavaScript wearing a fancy hat. That's all it is. It's built off of JavaScript. It looks like JavaScript except with extra bits to basically ensure that you're sticking to strict types when you are declaring and using variables and functions, all that sort of thing. Another thing it's really useful for is when you are writing your code, you want to make sure that you're not making stupid errors, making spelling mistakes, you know, importing the wrong package, all that sorts of things. It adds highlighting within VS Code to tell you when something is probably going to go wrong. Now, the flip side of that is that when you use extra packages or when you install extra packages, you often have to install their types as well because they're going to have specific types and methods that VS Code and TypeScript don't know about. And so we install those separately so that VS Code can read them and say, oh, yeah, that's a method that you have access to because you installed this package. Okay? Esther says, I have a question. TypeScript is only for JavaScript or also works in the JSX part of React. So TypeScript has its own React language called TSX. And so the files that we are going to be working with today, and I'll show you that in just a minute, they're going to have the file extension of TSX instead of JSX. So yes, TypeScript definitely does work with all aspects of React. Sorry, I'm catching up with chat here. Oh, C#, is that C#? Yes, it is. Yep. Yeah, C++ is a completely different language. C# is a Microsoft curated language. But C# can run anywhere. It's just Microsoft is that's their language that they push. Quatsa says, for one purpose, what purpose am I building an application for work? We build utility applications that our team uses for certain things. And so the one that I built talks to an Oracle database and reads and writes specific data for job scheduling. So I wrote essentially a database interface app that helps you schedule certain jobs. Never made errors, only debugging opportunities. Yeah. Yep. Okay, so let's install those types for Marked and for DOM Purify. So that way TypeScript can read them and knows, number one, that you're using them correctly, and number two, that you are using the correct methods associated with them. Because if you didn't, you get a lot of annoying yellow or annoying red highlights that you don't need. So we're going to do npm install at types / marked, and then we're going to say save dev, and I'll paste this in chat. What we're doing there is we're essentially just creating dev dependencies. So you can see here that you already should have a bunch of dev dependencies installed, and these are just the specific types for React, React DOM, etc., etc. So we're just going to install a couple more under our list of dev dependencies. So Marked first. There we go. Now we can see that that is on our list now, and I'll drop that in chat. There you go. And then the second one we're going to install is for DOM Purify. So exactly the same thing. And it does say something about deprecated, whatever, whatever. But I found that when I didn't install the marked types, it was giving me like, oh, can't recognize this, don't know what this is. So I installed it anyway, and that made the squiggly lines go away. So you might get a warning here, but I found out that I needed it. So you never know. All right, so the second one, npm install at types, and then DOM purify. You can kind of see a pattern here, right? They look similar. So if you're ever working with a package you're not familiar with, maybe the documentation's not very good and you just want to see if it has any types, you can pretty much follow this syntax and see if you can install some types for it. There we go. We've installed the types for both of them now. All right, so the second install is right here. Boop, boop, boop. There you go. Okay, so I'm going to assume everybody has both of those installed, but feel free. We can always, if you still need more time, feel free to let me know. But otherwise, we're going to go ahead and keep going. So now we've done all of our installations. That's really the only things we're going to need the terminal for up until we start it up again. So I'll make this a little bit smaller. All right, now we're going to go through and we're just going to clear out a few of the things in the folders. We don't have to do a whole bunch, but for example, I'm just going to open up the public folder here. We're going to get rid of this image. That we'll open up the source folder here. This is where the meat of what we're actually going to be doing today. This is where all the meat of the application actually lives, right? Should look pretty familiar, even if you've only ever used Create React App before. You've got some pretty familiar files, but as I mentioned before, you'll see that they all have the extension TSX. And what this means is that they're sort of like JSX, right? Which is how we write React, but it's the TypeScript version. So these are all configured to work with TypeScript. First thing I'm going to do is I am going to go into app.tsx and I'm going to just clear it out. So we're just going to get rid of everything in here. Get rid of everything in there. And I'm also going to go into index.css, so the next one down, and I'm going to get rid of everything in there too. So cleared out both of these, and then I can actually go up to app.css, and I can get rid of everything in there too. So we're clearing out these three. All right. And we're going to leave main.tsx alone because this has some important stuff in it. This is what's actually going to help our project render out in the browser. So leave main.tsx alone. It's going to give you a little, oh no, I can't find anything in here, and that's okay. We're going to fix that in just a minute. But really, we're just clearing out all this extra stuff that we don't need. So we can also get rid of this react.svg. And now I think we're nice and clean. Oh, and also don't touch index.html either. So we're going to leave main.tsx and index.html just the way they are. And we've essentially just cleared out these three files here and made them completely empty. Esther says, wait, the React logo is a field. Not sure what a feel is. The Vite one is a URL. Yeah, so I mean, in the demo page, the React logo I believe is spinning, so it's actually an animation. You mean file? Okay, it's a file. Yeah. So the Vite logo is stationary and the React logo is spinning. So the React logo is actually like an actual animation. So that's why it's that way, I believe. All right, so we've cleared all these out. Now let's head back to app.tsx and we'll start actually writing some code. Finally, right? Oh yes, and if you want to, you can head on over into index.html and you can change the title. So we can change this if we want to. We can change this to Markdown checker and save that. That's perfectly fine. Right? Icefire says, did you delete React dot svg in assets. Yes. So my assets, you can see my assets folder is open here and there's nothing in it. Yeah, I deleted that. Essentially, I just got rid of all the media that they added by default. We don't need no stinking media, right? All right. Now let's go ahead and start writing some code. So I'm going to pull up my notes here on the other screen. Give me just a moment. We're not going to worry about the CSS just yet. We're going to get the actual bones of the app working first, and then we will start adding in some badges. We don't need no stinking badges. I'm glad you got the reference. Yeah. My family, somehow we say that all the time. Like, we don't need no stinking, then whatever. Yeah, that's a common phrase in my family's house. Okay, so if I'm working in React, what's the first thing I need to do? I'm building a React component, which I am. For those of you familiar with the React, what is the very first thing I always need to do whenever I am starting a new component? Spray? No. We know it's going to work. RAFC, even before that. Import. Yeah, we just got to import React. And you can use shortcut keystrokes if you want. If you have extensions installed that help you create components faster, that's perfectly fine. I'm going to be hand typing everything just so folks can keep up a little bit easier, but there's plenty of wonderful extensions out there that can help you out, such as that one that lets you do RAFC. I don't remember what it's called, but yeah. So we're going to import React and use state from React. Right? And it's gonna, now the first thing you'll notice is that if you've never used TypeScript before, you're gonna be like, why did it highlight this yellow? What's the yellow squiggly line? Well, essentially all this is saying is, hey, you have declared something, but you haven't used it, or you've imported something and you haven't used it. That's not an error, it's just a warning. The yellow squiggly line means warning. All right, now we're also gonna import market. And we're gonna import a specific like subset from market. So that's why I put the curly braces around it. And we're also going to import DOM Purify. Import DOM Purify from DOM Purify. There we go. Notice that when I did my import here, I capitalized DOM and P. That's just how it is. So just be careful that you're doing the right capitalization there. And then finally, I'm going to also import my CSS file. There we go. That should be all we need. Create blah blah. Okay, now I'm actually going to start building out my component. So my component, I'm just going to call it Markdown Editor. Markdown Editor. And I'm building functional components here, just FYI. If anybody's familiar with older ways of writing React, I'm using functional components instead of class-based React, because functional components are considered the modern current form of React. So that's what we're going to be using today. So I'm going to have a new function here called Markdown Editor, and I'm going to give it a type of react.fc. And essentially all I'm doing is I'm setting up, I'm telling TypeScript that this is a specific type of component. This is a React functional component. Okay, and so this syntax, if you're used to writing React components in JavaScript, this looks a little bit different, right? But you'll start to see that things kind of have a standard way that you write them. Hey, Eric, welcome to the stream. Good to have you. And so essentially what we've done here is we've given it a name. We've named our component Markdown Editor, and we've given it a type of React functional component, which will tell VS Code, hey, this is exactly what this is for. And so if we were ever to misuse it, React or VS Code would let us know. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to also set up our state variable. So in React, state is a way that we control when and how the user interface gets updated. So state variables can be used in a lot of ways, but essentially they capture a change and then they determine whether or not the user interface should be updated. So in our particular project, which actually I want to see if I can get that running again so I can just demonstrate for you here. So we'll do npm run dev on the finished version. Opens up. See? There we go. All right. So state controls when and how the user interface gets updated. So as I type text, I'll move this over a little bit. We can see that the box on the right gets updated, right? And so essentially what we do is we have a state variable that's listening for user input. And as soon as it receives user input, it updates this part of the user interface over here on the right. So we're capturing input here in the text box, and then our state variable is being triggered, it's being updated, and it's outputting its contents right here on the right. You love Markdown. Yeah, so that's exactly what we're doing today. We've built a Markdown preview tool if you're just joining us. So for example, you can type, live Markdown and get a live preview over here on the right. So that's what we're building. And so whenever you're setting up your React project, you always want to think about, okay, what needs to be tracked? What needs to be tracked in order to make sure that the user interface is always showing exactly what the user expects and what they need. And so determining what you should store and what state variables you should have and what you should store in those variables is a pretty big part of that sort of brainstorming when you're coming up with your React application. The React docs are actually pretty good at helping you learn how to make those decisions. So I would really suggest reading the React docs about state and how you set state variables and when you should and shouldn't declare them. It's pretty good. So, but really, we're only going to need one state variable, and that's the thing that's going to be capturing what the user is typing in the text box, and then plopping it out here on the right side and updating the UI over and over again. Okay. It's back over here on the right. So the question was, if the name of our component is Markdown Editor, should not the name of the file be the same instead of app.tsx? Yeah, so we're cheating a little bit here because we're only going to have one component in our app. But what you'll see most of the time is that your app.jsx or tsx or whatever is kind of like an aggregation of all your components. So if you had a bunch of components, you would still have an app.jsx or app.tsx, but that would kind of be a gathering place where you put all your components in the right order and determine what layout the user interface is going to have. And then you would have other files that are named, that have the specific names of the components they contain. And you would list all those out, and then you would import them into your app.tsx and roll them all up. However, in our case, it would be a little bit of overkill since we only have one component. We're only going to have one. So we're just writing it directly in app.tsx today. But if you look at a lot of my other React projects, you'll see just that. You'll see that I still have an app.whatever, but it just contains a roll up of the components in the proper order. You need to React. What does FC stands for? Functional component, which so it's essentially a function, right? This is literally how you would write a JavaScript function using arrow syntax, right? Nothing different. It looks just like a function. But essentially what we're doing is we're telling TypeScript that this is specifically a component, which is a little part of the user interface, and it's a functional component. So it's written like a function. Hope that helps. All right. So like I mentioned before, we're going to declare our state variable to capture what the user is typing and spit it back onto the screen as Markdown. So how you declare a state variable is always the same. We're going to call our state variable Markdown because that's literally what it is. That's what it's going to hold. And then the second part of it is always the setter function. So we're going to call it set Markdown. And then we're going to bring in use state. And we're going to set use state as a string. And the null value of that state variable is going to be just an empty string. So we did several things there. What we did is we first declare the state variable. So the state variable has a name of Markdown. That's what it's going to hold. So that seems like a good name. The second part of this is the setter function. So anytime we want to update our state variable, we can simply call the setter function, which is called set Markdown, and it will automatically update the state variable to whatever we need. And when you're declaring a state variable, you always call use state. That tells React what it is, what it's for. This is TypeScript here. This part here is TypeScript. which says, hey, this is a string. And then the last part of use state is always what the null value, or the initial, or I shouldn't say null value, what the initial value of that state variable should be. So whenever we initialize or start up this application, we always want the text area to show as empty, right? So empty string. So the initial value of this is an empty string. Okay. Hasta la vista. Hi, how are you? Hope you're doing well. All right, so this is our state variable. And now that's going to be able, we can call on that at any time now to hold whatever the user is typing and spit it back out as Markdown. Now I need to essentially create a function that's going to listen for what the user is typing in the text box and update our state variable every single time the user types in the text box. So when we have a user interaction, say it's a scroll, say it's a click, say it's a type, a key press, right? How is that um, captured and passed in to our application? What would we pass into a function in order to grab that user interaction? What key they press, for example? How do we know what key they press? What do we do? How do we get that? Oh, thank you so much for the follow. Robico, I think I forgot to thank you. So thank you, Robico. Thank you for the follow. And G Run Real, thank you so much for the follow. Appreciate having you here. Esther says, an event. Yes. So anytime the user interacts with our application, that information is actually captured and we can reference it. And that's held in sort of a generic object called an event. So whether it's a click or, you know, whether it's a click or a scroll or a typing, all the information about what the user did is actually held and captured in a gigantic object called an event. So we can reference that event. And for example, I can know exactly what key they were pressing, or were they holding down the shift key and pressing another key. So that allows me to capture this text that they're typing and store it in my state variable. Hey, Antonio, good to see you. How's it going? It's going well. This is a really fun project that we're building today. Yeah, and so essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to build out this function, and then I'm looking at the finished thing here to remember where yeah, and so essentially what we're doing is we are creating with this next function we're going to build, we're creating essentially an event listener, an event handler, to listen for events and then do something when those events happen. So we're going to add this event handler to our text box, to this text area. We're going to add it as an event handler here. So on change, it's going to do something and it's going to update our state variable. All right. So we're going to call this function handle input change. Whoops, I could type. Handle input change. And what we're going to be passing into this particular function is the event. And that event is normally when you see event handlers, event listeners, you'll see events passed in as either event or as simply E. I think E is probably more common, so that's what I'm going to use. And then because we're using TypeScript, we're going to give it a type. And specifically what this is going to be is a React change event. And even more specifically, where it's going to exist is inside of an HTML text area element. So that was kind of a lot, right? But all of this is basically telling TypeScript, this is a React thing. Specifically, it's a change event. And specifically, it's a change event that lives inside of an HTML text area element. All right. And really all we're doing is that anytime an event is recorded, we're going to call our set markdown function, and we're going to set it to whatever they were typing. And so does anybody know how do we go into that event? Because if you ever console log an event, it's actually a massive object, like I mentioned. It's a massive object, and it contains a crap ton of data. So all I want is what key they were pressing. all I want is what key they were pressing. So how do I retrieve just that? It's going to be E something, right? Because inside of an object, in order to drill down into that object to a specific key value pair, we use dot notation. Yeah, it's going to be the target, right? It's going to be the target. So it's going to be E dot. And then you can see as I start typing, it's going to give me a bunch of choices, but we want E dot target and then dot value. So what this is going to do is it's doing three things. It's saying, look inside that big, huge event object and then go down to the target. So here the target is essentially the thing the user interacted with. So in this case, it was a key. And then what was the value of the key that they pressed? Well, it was, H, it was E, it was S, it was something. So this is going to retrieve that specific letter that they typed. Target value is the specific letter that they typed. Hey, hi from Argentina. Wow. Welcome to the stream, One Craze. That's awesome. Hope everything's going well there. Oh, thank you for the follow, Heldy. Good to see you, Ewan. Welcome back. Okay, so now we can capture the key presses this way. And, and we're going to add this as an event handler on our text area once we get down to the bottom. And that's going to listen for users typing things. Okay, you can see we still got some squiggly lines here, and that's really just because we haven't used these things yet, but we will. And we've got a little, reg squiggly line here too, and that's going to go away as well. So don't worry about that. You're going to have some squiggles, maybe a little bit more than you're used to, but that's TypeScript for you. All right, now it's almost time for a break. Squiggly lines giving me anxiety. I have faith they'll disappear. They will. It's okay. They will disappear. I promise. All right, it is time for a break. So let's go ahead and do that. When we come back, what we're going to do is we're going to actually set up our export function. And so, oh, thank you so much for the sub, Esther. Wow. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for the sub. I really appreciate it. That's so generous of you. I appreciate having you here as well, Esther. Thank you. And thank you for the follow, Eric Christopher. There are many squiggly lines. It's okay. It's all right. I promise they'll go away. They'll go away slowly as we continue to build this out. It'll be all right. Antonio, sorry I missed your question. When I finish front end stuff, should I learn React and go to back end and stuff? Learn React and go. What I would suggest, Antonio, but obviously you can live your own life. But what I would suggest is learn basic HTML and CSS, and then learn JavaScript, and then learn full stack. So that way you can really build full stack stuff. And then after you're building full stack projects and putting them on your portfolio, then go back and learn React. I think you'll have a better grasp of React once you're really familiar with JavaScript logic. And you really understand full stack, then you'll be able to take better advantage of all the things that React can do, because it bundles a lot of things that you would normally do with HTML and JavaScript and puts them together. So that would be my suggestion for you, Antonio. Hope that helps. All right, break time. We're going to take 5 minutes, and when we come back, we're going to build our export file ability. So for those of you who just joined us, this application actually has the ability to take the stuff that you've typed out and export it and essentially download it to your machine. So right here, you can see I just clicked the export and it's downloaded it onto my machine. JavaScript logic's an oxymoron. It's the Wild West, I tell you. All right, so that's the function we're going to build out next. It's not as scary as it sounds. It's only that this export function is only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines. That's it. That's all you got to do in order to start exporting files and making them downloadable. So pretty neat. We'll do that when we come back. And then we'll also talk about some of the dangers of essentially doing what we're doing here and how we can mitigate those dangers. All right, so 5-minute break. please come on back because we're going to get to the fun stuff in the next hour here. We got all the, we always have the boring setup stuff in the first hour, but the second hour is when we're actually going to get this thing up and running. And then probably the third hour is just going to be CSS. But the second hour is when we're actually going to get it up and running and see how it works. And learn a little bit more about how you can make your applications more secure, how you can prevent malicious attacks inside of your applications, and prevent malicious cross-site scripting. So, all right, 5 minutes. See y'all back here soon. First hour is warm up. It usually is. Unfortunately, the more complex your applications get, the more setup is involved. Yep. All right. Be right back, folks. Alrighty, folks, we've got about a minute left in the break, so come on back whenever you're ready. And we're actually going to start getting this app up and running and learn a little bit more about how to protect your application against potential malicious cross-site scripting attacks. So get yourself some hydration, get yourself a glass of water, use the restroom, pet your dog, pet your cat, pet your significant other with their permission, of course, and then come on back. Alrighty, and we are back. I hope everybody had a nice break. A smooth transition, nice music. Yay, I'm glad you like the music. Yeah, and I'm glad you like the transition as well. The asset pack that I downloaded for Twitch had a some really cool animations, but apparently Twitch Studio can't do custom transitions. So those the transitions are all built in. But I actually like I had to use some of the built-in ones, but I actually like that's the zoom in effect is pretty cool. I think actually, so I dig it. I'm glad you like the music as well. That's from our good friend Crispy Nugget. So please do give them a follow on Twitter. Show them some love. They have worked really hard composing a lot of songs for a couple of debut albums coming soon. I don't know if they're already out or not. They're supposed to be coming out here shortly. So yeah, show them some love on Twitter. They were kind enough to let me use some of their songs. Chris was kind enough to let me use some of the songs for my channel. So I really appreciated that. Alrighty. Now, let's get back to it. So before the break, we just finished building out our basic structure of our components, basic structure of our application. We have declared our state variables, and we're also listening for changes to update those state variables. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do a little something that is going to protect our application from bad actors. You know, this song's good. That's all Crispy Nugget right there. They're a really good composer. All right, so we're going to create another function here called create sanitized output. So when we are sanitizing code or sanitizing when we're sanitizing data, what are we doing most when we refer to being sanitized as far as data goes or as far as text goes, strings go, that kind of thing. What are we usually talking about when we're sanitizing something? Erasing, maybe. Cleaning the data. Yeah, generally we're talking about cleaning the data in some way. Cleansing. Yeah, exactly. Where it's not necessarily that we're always erasing something. Um, it's more like we're making the text safe. It could be removing some of it. It could be altering certain parts of the text, you know, while keeping the actual meaning of the text intact. Maybe we're just altering something about it. Maybe we're removing something. Maybe we're adding something, things like escape characters and that kind of thing. So sanitizing is generally just making sure that the text is safe for consumption in the thing that we're putting it in. So wherever we're putting it, we want that text to not do anything bad. And that's very possible. So it's users can do things to applications to essentially make them do things like give up a list of all the users who are using the application or access secure data. A big thing a few years ago was people using things like SQL injection to get lists of passwords, get lists of users, all those sorts of things. And so whenever we're building an application, we want to be careful about what we allow into that application and whether what we're allowing into that application can hurt us, can hurt our users, can hurt the application itself. Okay. So what we're doing here is something very specific. So how this app is actually going to work is it is going to take in this text, right? It's storing it in a state variable, and then it's essentially just putting that text directly into the DOM, right? So we know the DOM is the document object model, and so it's essentially just taking this text, transforming it into Markdown, and then just popping it right into the HTML. So if we were to go and inspect this, should be able to see inside of our little box on the right side here, if I just inspect the specific part. So we can see that inside this div, this Markdown preview div, there's literally a paragraph tag with, this gibberish in it, and then an H1 that's a header. And so what all this app is doing is it's taking in this Markdown, it's transforming it into HTML, and it's just popping it right into the DOM. So you might expect there could potentially be dangers associated with doing that, right? If we aren't checking anything that's being inserted here, a bad person could potentially write something malicious, write some malicious HTML that could cause our app to display things that maybe are supposed to be hidden, or cause our app to display, things that we don't expect, in order for this user to manipulate the application. And so I mentioned SQL injection earlier. That's probably the most common way that people abuse, text entry in applications, where you can actually, for example, in the username field, you might type in a SQL statement instead. So, I could type in something like from users, right? And if I was, typing this into a username field, if that SQL wasn't, or if that input wasn't properly sanitized, I could potentially be doing a select statement against the database. Little Bobby tables, right? If you're familiar with XKCD, the webcomic, there's a very famous one where a person named their kid like some drop tables students. they named their child that, and so then as soon as it was entered into a database, it dropped the students table, and they called their child Bobby tables for short. And so, yeah, that's that kind of malicious injection stuff that users can potentially do. And so we're going to prevent that by using that DOM Purify package that we installed earlier. So this DOM Purify, we're going to sanitize the inputs that the users are entering. Good old Bobby tables. Yep, not expecting code that might run inside our backend. Exactly. Making sure there's no unwanted sequences of characters. Yep, right? Frankly says, do we have to write our own sanitation functions? No, we installed a package that's going to do it for us called DOM Purify. Might feel like a bad person on Mondays. That kind. Bad actors, like SQL injections or Steven Seagal. Yeah, either one. Okay, so first off, what we're going to do is we're going to have this function take in our raw markup data. So this is literally the stuff that the user has typed. We're going to take that in and store it in a variable. So const raw markup is essentially going to pass the user's text through the marked package. So it's going to turn it into markup first, because we want to see what it's going to look like, right? So pass it through marked, and we're going to pass whatever is in the markdown state variable. So we've got our markdown state variable here. We're taking that state variable, whatever is in it, whatever the user has just typed, and we're going to run it through marked, which is going to turn it into markdown, like actually format it into markdown. And then we're going to store it inside of our raw markup variable. Now we're going to pass it through our sanitizer using DOM Purify. So const sanitize markup. And we're going to say DOM Purify dot sanitize. Just as easy as that. We don't have to write our own function to do it. We don't have to think about all the possibilities or know what they are. We can just pass it through here. And then it'll come out nice and shiny clean and not going to hurt us in any way. And then in the end, we can go ahead and just return the results of the sanitizer. And we're going to return it as HTML. So we're giving it a type of HTML, and we're returning sanitized markup, because that's what's going to come out of here is just some HTML, and then we're going to just boop, pop that right into the DOM. Okay. Y'all are funny. Kev says, do you do this for every front-end project? No, it depends on what you're doing, right? You're not always going to be putting stuff directly into the DOM. A lot of the times you're not. In our particular case, we are, because we're essentially taking in what the user is writing and we're spitting it out right back to them, right? We're essentially just taking in whatever they type and then we're spitting it right back onto the DOM. That's not necessarily what you're going to be doing with every project. A lot of the times you're going to be taking in user inputs, and then you're going to be, storing them in a database and then retrieving a result from the database, something like that. In this case, we're really just doing everything directly in the DOM, so we're going to be using DOM Purify for what you'll find is that when we're working with a database, a lot of the times we're going to be doing things like, uh, checking for things like in our controllers on the server side. We'll be, checking to make sure that the format is correct, so we're not getting anything unexpected from the user. We'll be doing things like if you're using Mongoose, you'll set up a schema that controls the types of data that can pass in. If you're using a relational database like a SQL database, you'll just set up your tables with the appropriate types for each column, stuff like that. So there's different ways to do it. But here we're working directly with the DOM, so we're using this package to sanitize that information. Hey, JS Maniac, welcome to the stream. Good to have you here. All right. So, yeah. So the question is, what's the difference between markup and markdown? Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't markup just like the act of adding formatting tags, and then markdown is specifically the type of language that we're using here? Although, feel free to enlighten me if I'm wrong on that. Yeah, and yeah, you'll want to maybe make sure that you're using the latest version of DOM Purify if anybody's discovered any new attacks or anything, but this should cover the majority of it. So now that we have these functions, we can actually build out our user interface and call these functions when we need them. Okay, and now we're finally going to get rid of these extra squigglies, right? We saw that some of those yellow squigglies went away when we started actually using these things that we imported. So the squigglies went away here, and then as soon as we add a return statement and start populating it in this component, the red squiggly should go away here. And as soon as we start using these functions, the yellow squigglies will go away. So for all you squiggly anxious people out there, we're going to get rid of those very shortly. Yeah, exactly. That was my impression, dummy, is that markup is just the generic term for adding, like, you're adding styling to the text, or the things that you're building. You're adding not styling, basic formatting to the text that you're creating. Whereas markdown is this specific type of formatting that we're doing here, using those very specific symbols that you know that we're building this tool around. Thank you for the follow, Jazz Maniac. Yeah, I was thinking it was a generic term. I did want to confirm that, but I was pretty sure. Okay. Now inside of our return statement here, this is the return. If you're not familiar with React, the return statement is the actual stuff that's going to be displayed. So what parts of the user interface are we going to display here? Well, we're going to display essentially two boxes, one on the left, one on the right. We're going to have a header, right? And then two boxes. One of them is going to allow text entry. This one is not, right? I can't enter any text in here. So one for text entry, and then a button. Okay. And now we're obviously also going to arrange all of these things in this particular order so that they look decent. All right. Now the funky thing about returns in React is, well, I'll let you guys tell me. What's the funky thing about returns in React? So if I want to put a bunch of HTML tags, let's say in this case, I know I'm going to need at least 4, right? I'm going to need a tag for my header. I'm going to need a tag for my text input. I'm going to need a tag for the output. I'm going to need a tag for the button. But if I were to start typing each of those tags individually inside of this particular return statement, React wouldn't like that. Why? Yes, exactly. React return statements can only take one element at the root. And so what you'll often find is that people will use what's essentially an empty tag to wrap all of their smaller HTML tags inside of them. But you don't always need that. Sometimes you do. But if you ever see an empty tag like this inside of a React component, you'll notice that that's just built to kind of hold all of the other tags that fit inside of it. Now, I did use that. I did use an empty tag here. If you look in the repo, you'll see it, but I didn't strictly need it. That was kind of when I was still playing around with the layout and what things I wanted where. And I just wanted the empty tag so I didn't get any errors. But we don't actually strictly need that here. There's nothing wrong with leaving it there. But we're going to wrap everything inside of a div. So React is going to be happy. That's going to be our root element. And the class name of that div, stop it. The class name of that div is going to be Markdown editor container. Okay. And then inside of that div, we can have our h1, which is going to have, it's just going to say Markdown live preview or whatever you want to call it. And I'm going to just give mine the demo tag, this just for my own, so I can know which one I'm looking at, whether it's my finished version or the one we're working on right now. And then below that, we're going to go ahead and have our input boxes. Oh, and I need to give my H1 here. I need to give it a class name of editor title, because we're going to do some styling on this in a little bit. All right, and JS Maniac mentioned you can position your VS Code sidebar to the right in your view so that when you use Control B, all your code doesn't suddenly move to the left. Oh, that's nice. The readability of it improves from left to right. Yeah, that's actually a great idea. I'm not going to do that right now, but I do like that idea. I am going to hide the sidebar though, because we're not going to be moving from file to file. So I want to give you guys more viewing space on this. Right? Yeah, so that empty tag is called a fragment. And you can definitely do it with something semantic HTML like a main or whatever. Or you could just do it with you could wrap everything in a div too. Those fragments, you can read more about them in the official React documentation. They're essentially just a way that to put all your tags in one bucket. Yeah, we're going to keep it at default just so that folks don't look at something that's unfamiliar to them. But I think I'm going to use that for personal use. I have a completely different VS Code configuration JS that I actually use for like when I'm building this stuff off of stream. Like I always build everything first before we go on stream. I have a completely separate like profile that I use. And so I'll probably move it to the right on my personal profile. No worries, JS Maniac. Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate the tips. Flexi, thank you so much for the follow. All right, so now for this input box here, what is this? What HTML element is this? What do we call this? What tag should this be? Yeah, it's a text area, exactly. Why wouldn't I use, yeah, so it's not a body because we want to specifically allow the users to type in it. So that's why when you're thinking about tags, you want to think about what are they supposed to do? Well, this one's supposed to allow the user to enter text. Now, why wouldn't I use an input box? Why wouldn't I use like a input tag? You see that even that formatted that? That's funny. Did it format it? Yeah. See, look, it formatted like it turned it into an input box over here, which I think is awesome. So I can type over here now because I turned that into an input box. That's awesome. I dig that. Yeah. So we specifically want multi-line entry. Yeah, and the other thing, this marked library also allows you to like create it literally allows you to create HTML inside your HTML, so you can HTML while you HTML, which is pretty funky. Yeah. Yep. So you could even use this for something like if you're building out kind of like like a kind of almost like a Figma for how you want your application to look in basic terms. You could do some basic markdown, add some basic tags, and kind of figure out what order you want stuff to be in. Well, the second inputs isn't sanitized. These don't go anywhere. they're not hooked up. Like, so if I were to just, this tag here is not, it's not hooked up to anything. So there's there's no submit. This data isn't going anywhere. It's just local. Um, so I think they could type whatever they wanted in there. We'll get rid of that though. But yeah, the reason we're using text area here instead of an input box is because we are because we essentially want multi-line entry, right? And input boxes are only single line. All right, so we got our H1. Now let's go ahead and set up our text area. Oh, and I gotta shrink that window back down again. I'll do that. And if I'm using Emmet, you can see it populates a bunch of stuff by default. So we can fill in several of these things, but I'm actually gonna get rid of all this default data here, and we're just gonna populate each thing, only the things that we need. So we're gonna populate class name for styling. We're gonna call it editor input. And then the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna say value. Now, what does value do? This value attribute, what is this gonna do? I'll give you a clue. Maybe it'll be clearer once I fill that in. What do you think this is going to be? So you can think about that. Format these so it's a little clearer. Go. Got our value. Next, we're going to do on change. And now we get to call our handle input change function. And then finally, we'll have our placeholder. Inception. Yeah. Hi, Rex Riker. Good to see you. Yes. And Drunko Grandma just used the Markdown formatting to link you to Place Kitten, which is it's a real valid website. It's okay. That's where you can generate kitten images if you ever need those for anything. But yes, so my question was, what is value? So value here is the actual text in the text area, just like Renate said. Value is whatever is going to be displayed in that text area. Now you might say, why do we need that? Right? Why do we need that? Because if I just create a text area, like we just saw that, right? If I go ahead and just recreate this tag in my little sandbox here, if I spell it right, there we go. So if I just create this little tag in my text area, I can type in there, right? Probably can't see that, but it's behind the chat. But if I create this tag, I can type in there just fine. Why do I need to assign it a value? Well, because with React, what we're doing and what we want to do in React, one of the primary goals in React is that you, as the developer, you are controlling every aspect of the user experience. You want to override any default behavior that these tags are going to have, such as input boxes or text areas or buttons. Pretty much in all cases, you're going to be overriding all of their default behavior and controlling it yourself. So that's essentially what we're doing here. We are essentially taking the value and writing whatever's currently stored in our state variable. So we're capturing what the user is typing, we're storing it inside of our state variable, and then we are populating it inside of the text area. Now, to the user, it doesn't look like we're doing anything differently. They're typing and they see what they type. But what we're actually doing is we're passing it through a middleman, which is our state variable, storing it in that variable, and then putting inside of the text box. And then also on change, that's how we're capturing what they're typing. We're finally calling our change event here, and that's how we're setting the state variable. So essentially, we're just capturing what they're typing here, storing it in our state variable, and then passing it right back down to display inside of the text area. Yes, exactly. As Yarmo very succinctly put it, we are syncing with state. Exactly. That's a great way to put it. Esther says, we're not going to define rows or columns for the text area. Nope. Nope, we don't need to. We're going to handle that with styling. We're going to handle that with grid. Y'all know what grid is. We don't need to use HTML to assign a fixed size to this text area because we don't want it to have a fixed size. We want it to stretch and grow, to stretch and shrink and be responsive based on how big or small our window is. And so the best way to handle that is with styling such as grid. Because we do not want this to be a fixed size. Rex says, "Do you have a system to come up with projects?" Yeah, my system is, "Hey, that sounds cool. I wonder if I can build it." That's my system. That sounds like fun. Or in this case, for this week's project, it was, "Hey, I'm not very good at Markdown. I should get better at Markdown. Hey, I wonder if I can build something that will let me preview Markdown in real time so that I can practice it without, having to guess what it's going to do." So that's how I came up with today's project. Yeah, it's not a sophisticated method. Yes, and that's a great point. You can actually preview Markdown in VS Code. I know that now, but I did not know that when I started building this. So there you go. But it's still not a bad project to build. All right. So we've set up our basic text area box. Um, and also too, we don't need the closing tag on text area here. Text area in React, the text area tag is only a single tag. So it's a little different than if you're just writing raw HTML. React is a little funky like that sometimes, but text area is a single tag. So open bracket and then slash close bracket. Now below that, we're going to put in our preview. So we've created the text area. Now let's go ahead and build out the actual preview where the text is outputted. Good system. I'm glad somebody likes it. Yeah, I'm not. I don't really have the like. I mean, I have like an overall plan of the types of things I want to talk about. For example, I went into this week's project basically thinking I want to do something with React because we haven't done a React project in a while. Okay, what works well with React? Well, things that have a lot of live updating. So that works well with React. And yeah, TypeScript sounds fun, but I'm not very good at TypeScript. So let's build something smaller and more lightweight. And so then that got me thinking about Markdown, and then here we are. Yes, we don't need it. Yep. So with React, you only need a single tag for text areas. It's a little different, I know, but React is like that sometimes. Divs are still the same though. So in our next div, this is going to be, remember, this is going to be our output for the text. So our class name is going to be Markdown Preview. And this is my favorite. I think this is my favorite. Like this is my favorite attribute. I think of all time. You're gonna love this. It's called dangerously set inner HTML. That's literally what it's called. You can see it auto completed as I was typing it. It's called dangerously set inner HTML, which I think is my favorite thing of all time. And what we're doing there is we're essentially doing exactly what it says on the tin. We are taking a div and we are telling it, hey, put this stuff inside of the div. The div doesn't know what it is. It doesn't really care what it is. It's just going to take whatever we give it and it's going to boop, put it up in there as a child. So, and that's why it's dangerous, like we talked about before, because we could put whatever the heck we wanted in there. The user could put whatever the heck they wanted in the DOM. That's why it's called dangerously set inner HTML. And so, but what we're going to do there is we're going to call our sanitizer function. And now it's not dangerous anymore. All right. Last name Kenny Loggins. Danger zone. Yeah, exactly. And actually, sorry, I lied. This div is also going to be a single tag because it's not going to have any content. So this div just looks like this because it literally has no content. We are creating the children of this div by passing in the stuff that comes out of this function. So that's what we saw earlier when we did the inspect element on this. So when we inspect this, if I open up this div, the one that we just created, Markdown Preview, if I open this up, we can see it's got a paragraph, it's got an H1, it's got a paragraph, and it's got a text area inside of it. So that's what dangerously set inner HTML does, is it just generates all these things. Whatever we give it, it puts it inside of the div. Adding to resume, live dangerously. Yeah, so the question was, ooh, this is a good question. I like this question. Why the parentheses after create sanitized output, but not after handle input change? That is an excellent question. Does anybody have any theories? Why did we put parentheses, or sorry, why did we put parentheses here, but not here? If when you are calling a function or when you are working with functions, what do the parentheses do? Have you ever thought about that? When you're writing your JavaScript, what do the parentheses actually do? What do these do when you're writing your JavaScript? Just forget about TypeScript, React, whatever. Forget about that. It works the same everywhere. Plain JavaScript, vanilla. What do the parentheses do? Got some guesses. We've got take a value, call a function, takes an argument. Yeah, so the answer is that the parentheses specifically call the function immediately. So as soon as the code hits this block, it's going to immediately call this function. Yeah, immediate call. Now, is that what we want here? Remember, this is our text area. We've got the users typing in it. As soon as our code encounters this text area, do we want it to immediately call the function? What is this doing? What is this on change doing? Yeah, exactly. We don't want the function to be called or executed until the user is typing. That's the difference. So this can be called immediately, all the time, as many times as needed. This needs to wait until the specific on change event is encountered. That's exactly what I'm talking about here, Rex. This is the example that I'm giving. See, there's no parentheses there. So it's waiting. The function will not be called until the specific on change event is encountered. Okay? So let's see. Not until something changes. Yeah, that's the difference. That's what we type. Yep. How about when there's no parentheses? Yeah. So this is waiting to be called. And this can be called this doesn't have to wait. It can be called essentially what's going to happen here is this is a little interaction with what React is actually doing. Okay, this is a little uh, introduction to how React actually works. So how React works is it's constantly looking at the DOM, looking at all the HTML elements, and it's determining when one of those elements perhaps needs to be updated. So when we're typing here, when the user is typing, that information is being stored in our state variable. The state variable registers that something has changed, right? Because as soon as the user started typing, this function was called. So React determines that both this text area needs to be updated and the div needs to be rendered again to update, to reflect the most current state that the app is in. So the div is rendered again, and when the div is rendered again, then this function immediately gets called once that render takes place. As the render is taking place, it hits this part of the code, it immediately calls the function. Whereas this one is contingent on the user actually typing something before it can be called, or it should be called. This one can be called as soon as the div refreshes to display the updated data. Does that make sense? This is a little confusing because we're getting into more of like the mentality of how React actually operates. Why this, why you can have the parentheses here but not here. Because the way React operates is it's unlike a standard HTML web page, which only renders everything once and then has to reload. to do it again, React doesn't work that way. React dynamically renders bits of the user interface as many times as it needs to update what's going on. Okay? Does that help? You're allowed to say, if you're still confused, you're allowed to say so. Esther, I wouldn't try to run it just yet. We're almost done, I promise. Hey, Dad's Cap, welcome to the stream. Trying to keep up, not gonna lie, but you're here. Hey, I appreciate the hustle. Renee says, why does handle input change update the div and not just the text area tag? Because so handle input change is doing a few things. We have to think about the path that the data is following, right? So on change, we're telling it to do a thing. So on change, we're telling it to handle input change. All right, we do that. Oh, thank you for the follow, Dats Cap and Loxy. Appreciate it. Oops, I didn't mean to click that. All right, so on change, we're calling handle input change. Handle input change updates our state variable with whatever the user is typing. So now the state variable has changed, right? There's something new in there. The user has typed something. Then that value is passed back down into our, essentially into our text area here, right? That gets updated. But also what happens is, notice that the state variable is also used here. It's also used in this create sanitized output function. So something is different there. The div needs to be re-rendered because it's calling this function. The function gets called as soon as the div re-renders, and then that displays the updated information. Kind of funky, but you don't have to really understand exactly the path that the stuff is taking, but just remember that, yeah, it's a little weird, right? But just remember that the parentheses, if you get nothing else out of this, when you see parentheses after a function, just know that it will be called as soon as the code encounters it. So however that takes place, if you see parentheses after a function, it'll be called as soon as the code encounters it. If you don't see parentheses after a function call, it'll only be executed once a certain condition is met. So a lot of the times you'll see this, for example, on event listeners. If you're just writing plain HTML, you'll see event listeners set up this way with no parentheses after the function name. Versus if you wanted to execute immediately, you would put the parentheses after it. I think every single web developer at some point has built an application and built an event listener and put the parentheses after the function and then wondered why their application isn't working correctly. I know I have done it. I'm sure Leon's done it. I'm sure literally everybody has. It's a very common mistake, which is why I wanted to talk about it. And I'm really glad that you asked that question. Whoever asked the question, who did that? Oh, Renitz, yes, you asked the initial question. Yep. Okay, now we're almost done with this, so let's finish it out. So we've got our div here, and then finally we've got our button to export. And oh, we didn't do our actual file export function. I think we skipped that. Okay, well we'll do that. We'll do that in just a minute. That's all right. We can still code the button. So on click, we're going to, again, it's a similar situation. We want to wait for a click. So we're going to create this event handler here. On click, we're going to call a function called export to file, which I forgot to create, but we'll do that in a minute. And then our class name is going to be export button. And the text of the button should just say export to Markdown. And then finally down here at the end, we're going to do the thing I always forget to do, which is actually export the component. So export default Markdown editor. There we go. All right, now we can see that finally got rid of those red squigglies here. So now the only squiggly left. So if you look now, if you scroll up and down, through all of your code here, the only red or yellow squiggly you should see should be this right here. If you see any additional red or yellow squigglies, then you've got something else wrong. So that's a nice thing about TypeScript is that it really helps you identify this stuff before you try to run it. So take a quick look up and down all of the code you've written and make sure that the only squiggly you see is this guy right here. And we're about to fix that in just a second. Drunk Uncle Grandma says, I've done it with ConnectDB when abstracting the Mongoose connection to a database.js file in a config folder. Yeah, so you ended up calling the function at the wrong time. Yeah. Yes, only one squiggly. Good job. So a lot of folks are like, wow, TypeScript takes a lot of effort. Like, why do we have to bother with TypeScript? The nice thing about it is that it really helps you just take a look at your code and quickly find the stuff that's wrong. Ah, Esther found an issue. I have one wrong. I wrote capital marked instead of just lowercase marked. Yeah, that's the stuff that TypeScript helps you catch. And a lot of those little silly mistakes are the things that I do all the time. So yeah. So now let's get rid of our last squiggly by creating this export to file function, which as I said before, it's only 6 lines. It's really not a big deal. So we'll get that done and then we'll test the app, get it running. And then in the last hour, we'll add the CSS and all the styling. But yeah, good catch there, Esther. I'm glad you were able to catch that. So above our sanitizer here, we're going to create a new function and we're going to call it export to file. There we go, export to file. What's this? What's sauce precious? Yeah. You don't see it very often on my stream, but we're going big today. We're using grid. Hope you like my Gollum voice, by the way. Okay, so inside of our export to file, essentially what this needs to do is it needs to pull everything out of this input box here. It needs to package it up. It needs to put it inside of a markdown file, and it needs to download it onto our machine. So it actually needs to take all this garbage that we've entered, bundle it up into a file, save it, and download it onto our machine, which isn't as hard as it sounds. Glad you loved it. All right. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to declare a variable called blob. That's not a typo. It's literally called blob. And we're going to create what's called a blob. So I'm just curious, how many of you have heard of blobs? Like in the sense of coding. I mean, I know it's a word, but like how many of you have actually heard of a blob? Never? Nuibin says like a blob object. Yeah, it essentially is. Yeah. So you may have heard of it in the sense of, when you're working with, databases or similar things like that. In Oracle databases, we have something called a clob. Remember heard of? Yes. Remember what it is? No. Copperly says, yeah, Copperly even knows what it stands for. Dang, good job. All right. So yeah, it literally stands for binary large object. And essentially that's really what it is. It's just a big old bunch of stuff, just a big old bunch of stuff, a big bucket of stuff of data encoded as a binary and blob together. So you can take the entire blob, which might contain a lot of stuff, and do things with it, like put it in a file or or save it somewhere or download it somewhere. So we're going to be wrapping up everything in this text area into a blob and then saving that as a file. Blobject. Yeah, buzzword added Yankee. Yeah, I think that would be a pretty good one to add. And the cool thing is, since we were smart about the way we built our state variables, we can just take whatever's the context of this markdown variable R. We can just take all this stuff and put it straight into the blob. Oh, thank you for the follow, Nui Ben. And Dots Cop, thank you for the follow as well. I think I thanked you already, but there's no harm in thanking people twice. Bob, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you've seen SQL data types called tiny blob and long blob, and I giggle every time. Yeah, Oracle decided to call theirs clobs, maybe to cut down on the humor factor, but I don't know. All right, so we're essentially going to take everything in our markdown variable and we're going to put it into a blob. And again, the cool thing here is that we don't actually have to do something like go into the text area and try to copy everything or whatever, because it's all stored here. It's already being captured. So we don't have to do any extra work. We can just take the contents of that variable and put it in a blob. Oh my goodness. Tap Envy, thank you so much for the raid. Wow. Thank you so much. Welcome, raiders. We are having fun with Markdown, TypeScript, and React today. Welcome in. What were y'all working on? Raid. Welcome, Ryan Wolf. Hi, Tap Envy. What were y'all doing today? Welcome, welcome. Yeah, so do exclamation point project if you would like to take a look at what we're building today. We are essentially building a Markdown live previewer using TypeScript and React. And so, yeah, you can essentially type, something like header or list items, basically just whatever you want to type in live Markdown. And it'll show up as a live preview on the right. You can also do things like HTML tags, such as like an input box. And you can have that show up as well. So it's more of a little fun exercise in learning TypeScript, React, and Markdown all together. You're working on a client site. Oh, very cool. Hope it went well. Oh, here, I'll do the project. It may have just been a timeout thing there, Kung Fu. Yeah, there you go. There's the project. If anybody is interested, anybody who just joined, if you're interested in the repo, feel free to take a look. Yeah, as Hat Knight said, that's very cool, super useful. Thank you for that. It's fun too. Oh, thank you, Tap Envy. I appreciate that. You're helping a new contractor get set up on another one. Okay. Sounds like you're pretty productive then. And what we're doing now is we're actually setting up the next feature of this project, which is that you can export whatever you've typed here. You can export it as a Markdown file. So if I click that button, we can see it gets downloaded onto my machine. And so we're setting up that functionality right now. So first thing I'm doing there is I'm creating a blob. And I'm actually going to give that blob a type of Markdown. So the type here is going to be text / Markdown. Markdown. There we go. And now, how do I get that blob? Let's think about how do I get that blob? Oh, hi, Nui Ben. And I'm only class 20. Leon shouted you out during that stream, so I stopped by to follow and say hi. Oh, thank you, Nui. It's good to see you. I appreciate it. Yeah. If you're only on class 20, you might be interested in some of my older stuff, which covers all of the homework, all of it. So if you're just going through now, I have covered literally all of the homework from cohort 2 on my older streams. So do check that out if you ever need assistance with the homework. A lot of my older stuff is a little bit more vanilla JavaScript, less of this advanced stuff. So if you're interested in that, you can check out my YouTube channel and get help with literally every single homework assignment in the JavaScript part of the course. So do !YouTube if you want to link to my YouTube channel where you can search through my archive for specific projects or specific homework assignments. All right, so how do we get this blob? How do we get this blob into an actual file? Well, the way we're going to do it is we're actually going to turn our button into a link and then turn the target of that link into a file download, which I think is pretty cool. Oh no, have fun, Tap Envy. Yeah, that's what I usually do too. By the end of my streams, I'm super hungry, and so I go raid somebody, and then I'm like, bye, going to dinner. So yeah, no, I appreciate the raid, and I appreciate you stopping by, Tap Envy. Yeah, good luck on your project. So we're gonna set up something. We're gonna set up a link, and we're essentially going to create a new element attached to our button. So document.createElement. We're just gonna create an anchor tag. Okay, and then we're going to set the download target of that link to be the file name we want to create. So the target of that link is going to essentially take the blob and it's going to put it to the target that we specify, which is literally a file named markdown.md. Onion volcano. Yeah, everybody always makes me hungry on these streams. All right, so link.download, not lonk, link.download. And the name of that is going to be Markdown. I'm going to call mine Markdown export.md. And then the href for the link is going to be window.url, create object URL. Here we go. Get object URL. And then we're going to pass in the blob. So essentially what we're doing here is we are creating a link, which is an anchor tag. We are specifying the target of that link to be the file that we want to put this stuff in. And then what we're passing into that is our blob. Then that's going to create a file. And then it's going to, because we specified link download here, it's going to actually download that. And then finally, we want to make sure that link is triggered. So we're going to link.click it. And then last thing we're going to do is remove it. Because we want to get rid of all the blob, the contents, everything. We're going to get rid of that. And so it can be triggered fresh the next time the button is clicked. Now I need to see why I've got a red squiggly. Probably I forgot a parenthesis somewhere. I know I forgot my semicolons. Make that better. All right, what did I miss? Hang on. Markdown. This is why TypeScript is helpful. Oh, autofilled attribute instead. Yeah, good catch. Stupid autofill. All right, this should be create element. There we go. Document. Oh, come on. Create element. There we go. Now, as soon as I fixed that, it worked. So I'll go through this again. Essentially, what we're doing is we're creating a link by creating an anchor tag. And then we're setting the download property of that link to the file name that we want. And then we're setting what's being passed in, which is our blob. We're creating a URL out of it. We're passing in our blob. We're immediately clicking the link, which triggers the download, and then we're removing it. Yeah, that was a good catch. Yeah. So now our red squiggly is gone. We can call the function. So let's maybe give this a test. Right? This is probably not something you're going to do like super often, but it is kind of neat to know how you can kind of set up a custom link. And you could do this like if you already had an anchor tag inside of your application, you could do this exact same thing. You could create a file name, you could create a download, and just have people click an anchor tag to download a file, which is sometimes useful, right? But yet another reason why, we want to make sure that our inputs are sanitized, because we don't want people downloading stuff that could potentially hurt them in any way. Oh, Grandma says, holy crap, that logic will work with my Cloudinary image project. Oh, yay. I'm glad you found something you can apply to another thing. All right, so let's see if we can run this and let's see if it works. That's awesome though. I hope it works. So if we want to run this, we can just say npm run dev. See if it works. All right, open it up. Hey, check it out. So we don't have any styling yet, obviously, but let's enter some plain text. Yep, that works. Make this bigger. All right. Here, oops. Here is a header. Yep, that works. And try some HTML. Yep, and there's an input box. List item. We could do something like a block quote. Yep. Or bold. Yeah, it's working. Hooray. We did it. Go team. Did everybody else's work as well? Sorry, from what? Did you mean to say form? First try. Yes. First try.
Yet's just redeemed first try.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah, and you could enter pretty much you could enter whatever tag you wanted in here, really. Um, any HTML should also render out any HTML you wanted to enter. Oh, I'm glad you think so. So Nat said Singmo, welcome to the stream. Yeah, so we haven't styled this at all, but this is how it's going to look when it's fully styled. But all the logic is there and all the logic is working. So now let's test the export. So we're going to test our export here, and when I do, we should see it download here in Chrome. So I'm going to click this. Yay, it worked. All right, so let's see what happens if so this is my downloaded file here. Click this. We can open it in VS Code, and we can see that that is literally the markdown that I entered right here. It took it, it bundled up into a blob, it downloaded it, and now I can, do something like maybe save it into a README. Oh, you were asking if it could handle a form tag. I mean, maybe if you filled everything out, I think you would have to fill out like all of the attributes and stuff. Um, you know, I don't think it's going to do anything if I just were just to do like form like this. I would have to put something inside of it, like input. Yeah, so that's not going to work. Yeah, it's not. Oh wait, no, it did. It put it. Nope, never mind. It put it in. I just didn't scroll down. Yep, it created it. So we could do like a label. I forget. Does label have a closing tag? Um, yeah, there we go. See, it added a label to the input box. Yeah, it is cool. Yep. So it can handle labels apparently. Like I think it should be able to handle whatever tag you throw at it. Cyber says HTML gets rendered. Didn't we sanitize this stuff before? Yeah, we ran it through DOM Purifier, but that doesn't stop it from rendering out safe HTML, just nothing malicious. Yours wasn't working because you didn't save it. Classic. Yeah, and if you want to learn more about what DOM Purifier is actually doing, yeah, there we go. You can check out the package documentation. Um, maybe. Oh, let's see. I was reading some docs earlier. Where are they at? Yeah, so it just really just looks for cross-site scripting stuff, and it works against HTML, MathML, SVG, Markdown, obviously. And so, yeah, if you want to learn more about it, I'd suggest that you read the documentation. It sanitizes HTML and prevents cross-scripting attacks. You can feed DOM Purify with a string full of dirty HTML, and it will return a string with clean HTML. So it doesn't stop HTML from going through; it just takes out the bad stuff. It'll strip out everything that contains dangerous HTML and thereby prevent cross-site scripting and other nastiness. It's also damn bloody fast, apparently. And it's also, by the way, it is so this particular package is also what Marked, the markup language parser that we're using. It's what Marked recommends for use with their product. So if you look at the documentation for Marked, it suggests that if we go to security here, um, it suggests that you use DOM Purify along with its tool to make sure that you don't do something bad. So take that as you will, but that's what they recommend. Right? Okay, so our basic MVP, right, minimum viable product, is working. We're getting what we expect. We're getting export functionality. We're getting input functionality. We can do, let's see if we can do a photo. I think we should be able to. I'm going to copy that photo I used earlier. Pop this in here. There we go. Yay, it's an image. So you can also do images. You can do hyperlinks, whatever you like to do. You added a clear input button. That's awesome. Yeah, and because we're putting all that input inside of a single state variable, it's very easy to add something like a clear input button because all that clear input button needs to do is call the set state, right? It needs to call our set state function, our setter, and just put it back to null. all you need to do. So if you wanted to do something like a clear input, you would just create a button and then create a little like create an event handler for the button on click and then create a function that all it does is it sets the state variable back to an empty string and voila. Yes, and Markdown can do tables. We talked about that a little bit at the start of the stream. There's this great website that I have here that I use a lot, which is Markdown Cheat Sheet, and it talks about how you can do things like tables and you know centering text in various ways and all sorts of things. Yeah, so that's the website. I'll paste it again. I think it's really helpful. All right. So if you want to run this Gubrick, you just do npm run dev. And you can also look for that. You can also see that script inside of your package.json. So here's your script. You do npm run dev, and that should start the application. Yep. All right. So I think this is a good place to pause. When we come back, we're actually going to make this look like less garbage and and make it look more like this. So make it look nice with a bunch of nice styling and sort of Reactish formatting. And you actually get to watch me do CSS, which you never get to do. So it's like spotting a unicorn in the wild. We're going to be doing some raw CSS, baby. No Bootstrap, no frameworks, no Tailwind, just us and the CSS down in the mud fighting with it. It's going to be great. What a treat. Look at that subtle gradient, the tasteful thickness of it. Yes, I understood that reference. All right. 5 minutes on the clock. When we come back, you get to watch me do my favorite thing in the world, which is raw CSS. Enjoy. Full frog. Yeah, we're going full frog. Actually, we're beyond. We are above Flexbox Froggy here. We are doing grid, people. It's gonna be wild. Or yes, you got to order business cards. I wonder why for HTTP pics, exclamation point is required, but not for images in public folder. Yeah, I don't know. That might be something that's on that website somewhere, that Markdown cheat sheet website. If you click on, so if you go to the cheat sheet and then like you click on a particular topic, such as like image or whatever. So like here, if you were to click on this, it takes you to a whole page where it explains a whole bunch of stuff about it, like a ton of documentation. So I bet you could find the answer to that question somewhere on that page. I'm not going to look at it right now, but I bet you could. So check it out. It's really great documentation. All right, 5 minutes on the clock. See you back here shortly. Going to do some CSS. Okay, folks, we got about a minute left in the break, so come on back if you're coming back. Get yourself a glass of water, use the restroom, get up and stretch. If you've been sitting this entire time, I implore you to get up and stretch if you're able to do so. Um, Pet your dog, pet your cat, pet your significant other with their permission, of course, and then come on back. So, Gubrick, that sounds like you didn't CD into the proper folder. So, my guess is that you missed changing directories into the actual folder where your project lives. And so now you're having problems because none of your dependencies are installed in the right place. That's probably why. Alrighty, we are back, folks. Welcome back. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good to see everybody back here. Kubrick, I don't know whether or not I was unmuted. Did you hear any of the stuff I just said? Oh, my phone is ringing. I'm sorry. Hang on. Oh, one moment, folks. I think I got to answer this. Give me one moment. Okay, so sorry about that, folks. That was my neighbor. She's kind of elderly, and so I just wanted to make sure everything was okay. But she's fine. She just wanted to talk to me about something. But I saw, I never get calls from her, and I saw that she's like an elderly lady, and so I was like, okay, I gotta take this and make sure she's all right. But she's fine. We're all good. I'm gonna go talk to her after the stream about some stuff. So um, I like my neighborhood. We look out for each other. All right, so let's get back to it. Before the break, we got everything working. So Phil, welcome to the stream. Um, BRB, is anyone interested in checking out? Yeah, you can post a link to your project if you would like to. We won't check it out here live, but anybody that wants to can go take a look. Absolutely, that's cool that you got a project. All right, so now let's do some CSS. I'll leave the MVP up here so we can watch it change as we add CSS, change and distort and get weird. But let's go ahead and head over to our app.css and start building some stuff. Get my notes up here because I cannot do this stuff on the fly. I have to have notes for CSS. Physically impossible. Oh, thank you, Phil. Yeah, I'm really lucky in my neighborhood that I have really great neighbors, like on every side of me. So we all kind of keep. I have their phone numbers. We all keep in touch with each other. So if any of us needs anything, we can help the other person out. Oh, no worries, Gubrick. It's okay. Gubrick, I think what you missed was at the very beginning, after you create your Vite project, you're supposed to CD into the directory that was created before you start installing stuff. So I think that's the problem. It's okay. You should be able to fix that by just making sure that in your terminal you're CD'd into the right directory. You do your npm install, you reinstall Marked, you reinstall DOM Purify, and then you should be able to run it and you should be okay. So CSS, let's start out with some general stuff for the body. And so for the body, we're just going to kind of set we're going to set our margin to be 0. We're going to set our background color to be that nice sort of gray, steel gray React. I'm basically mimicking the style of React because I'm not creative enough to come up with my own style. So set that. And then the color for everything else should be essentially white. So we'll do just plain FFF, FFF. There we go. So if I save that, there we go. Now we can see that the colors have essentially inverted. We're in dark mode now, which is by far the best mode, right? Looks much better on the eyes. Every website should have a dark mode, in my opinion. Now we're going to style the container. Keystroke visualizer, that's awesome. I love those types of things. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. That sounds really cool. So now we're going to style the container that all of our elements live in. So if you remember, use bright orange and Comic Sans because graphic design is your passion. Hey, you do you, my friend. So if you remember, the way we set this up is inside of our TypeScript file here, we essentially created a big div to hold everything, and we called that Markdown editor container. So inside of that div, we have our H1, we have the text area, and then we have the output div and the button. So those four elements, the header, the two boxes, and the button, they live inside of a single container. So we're going to style that container, and we're going to configure it as grid. We're going to configure it using a CSS style method called grid. Now, you may not be familiar with grid. It's not something that really gets touched on in 100 devs, but it's probably the most modern way of doing vanilla CSS. So it's good to at least know what it is when you see it. So we're going to style the container, Markdown, editor, container, and we're going to set the display property to be grid. Normally we might use flexbox or floats here, but grid is what we're going to be playing with today. And so in order to configure grid, we essentially, what grid is really what it says on the tin. Oh, Ryan Wolf and Oxner, thank you so much for the follows. Good to have you here. Flexbox gang until death. Well, what grid is really nice for is it essentially lets you divide your display into multiple sections, right? Into basically a grid, right? Rows and columns. You're dividing it up, you're slicing it up into like a chessboard kind of a deal. And so you control how many rows and columns you want on your display. And that essentially lets you put things in buckets that are already arranged in the right way. So unlike something like floats or, sort of even Flexbox, where you kind of have to make sure that things are stacking and aligning in the right way, what grid allows you to do is just put things in the right bucket because those buckets are already pre-aligned on the grid. So you just say what bucket you want your stuff in, and it's going to align itself. Snap to rows and columns, basically. Does grid look bueno on mobile? It should, depending on how you format it. Now, in this particular case, I didn't really make this particularly mobile friendly because I should have had the grid rearranged for mobile so that the two boxes stack on top of each other. I didn't do that, but you could make it mobile friendly certainly. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up how many columns we want, and we want two columns of equal size. So we're going to do one FR and one FR. I'm forgetting in the moment what FR stands for. I think it's full row. So essentially we're creating two columns that are as wide as they can be within the width of the display, right? So they're going to fill the space that they have available. Since we're setting them equally, they're going to each take up exactly half of the width of the column. Or sorry, the width of the display. My apologies. Oh, real. No gap. Fractional units. Yes, that's right. I was thinking it was full row, but it's fractional units. Yes, you're exactly right. So in that case, essentially two columns, fractional units means that they're going to each take up an equal width on the display. So now the next thing we do is we set our rows. So grid template rows. And we're going to set this one up a little bit differently. Auto, FR, and min content. So what we're doing here is we're essentially saying that our center section should be 1 FR. Our header should size itself to fit what space it can take up. And then our min content should be the smallest possible thing. The min content is what's going to hold our button. So that should be as small as physically possible. to fit the content so that the content doesn't overflow. It needs to be as small as physically possible to fit the content so that nothing overflows. Oh, sorry. Yes, I'm on the wrong tab. I apologize. Yeah. Um, do that. You aren't going to see much change yet. We're just setting up the grid for now. Yeah, and there's lots of different ways to do it too. I'm not an expert with grid by any means. I'm not an expert with CSS by any means, but I've just kind of started playing with grid a little bit because I feel like it's easier for me to grasp, given that everything is in nice orderly rows and columns. And I'm a database developer, so I work with rows and columns all day long. I can visualize like that like crazy. Now we can also set a gap value here, which is going to essentially put a space, between those two columns, so a little white space gap. Um, just for styling purposes. Oops, stop it. Our height is going to be 100 VH, which is going to resize itself. So it'll resize itself based on the vertical height of the display. We'll have some padding. 1 rem, 1 rem, and 2 rem. So we're going to add a little extra padding at the bottom. And then our box sizing here is going to be border box. So what that's going to do is take into account any borders that we're putting on the elements, and the padding. So it's gonna factor in all of those things when it's calculating the size of everything. And then finally, our font family is just going to be sans serif. I'm not getting fancy with it here. All right, so we'll save this and we'll see what it does. Yeah, all right. So we're starting to see that grid. We're starting to see that grid take effect, right? And we can see that things aren't arranged correctly, right? The button is huge. Big button. Yeah, exactly. The button is huge, but we can see that things are arranged on a grid. Now we just need to make sure they're arranged correctly. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to style the editor title. So editor title, oops. This will be our H1 that we're styling. If I could type title. We'll do grid column. So this is just essentially telling grid how many columns, how many columns this element should take up. We want it to span everything. So that's how we would denote that. If we want this title to span across all the columns, the notation is this. Now you could ask me why the notation is that. I don't know the answer. If somebody else is better at grid, I'm sure many of you are. Somebody else is better at grid. Maybe if you could explain why we do the full span notated like that, that would be most helpful. And then where do we want to put this? Where do we want to put this header? We want to put it in the first row. We want to put it at the top, which is essentially like our in the grid. It's like our header row. So grid row is going to be first row. So we'll save that. We'll see what it does. There we go. Now that I do that, we're starting to get the actual layout going, right? Because as soon as I said, hey, Markdown, or sorry, hey CSS, hey, grid, put this item in the first row, have it span across all the columns, then these other two elements get shoved down, they get put next to each other, and then the button also gets compressed because we told grid to essentially make it as small as possible without overflowing any of the content. So it squished it down. So we're looking better. And the color is also going to just be white, which it already is. Technically I don't need this, but it doesn't hurt anything. Text align is going to be center. Give it a little bottom margin. That'll be 1 rem. Get a font size of 2 rem. All right, there we go. That didn't change too much, but it did center the text, change the font, and made it a little smaller. Oh, Feel Smooth says, okay, so that notation of this This particular notation here just means start at the left side of the grid and go all the way to the right edge of the grid, whatever that may be. Okay, that makes sense because essentially this means where you're starting, and then this means essentially no matter how wide the grid is, go all the way to the right side. So usually a negative value in these types of situations means essentially like an overflow, right? We're overflowing, we're going as far left as we possibly can, then we're overflowing, which wraps around back to the right. And so that tells us that tells this element to span the entire column width. So yep, that makes sense. It's just using that overflow property to denote that. Now I want to, basically what I want to do next is I want to style both of these boxes, so the input box and the output box, almost identically. So I can add some styles to both of them. Editor, input, and I can style my Markdown preview at the same time. Using the common notation, I can style them both at once. That editor, yes, I am an editor. I write words good. If you can believe it, I was a copy editor for a newspaper for a while. So I corrected people's spelling mistakes all day long, and here I am, hardly able to type. How the turntables. Edutator. Yeah, that's what I am. I'm an edutator. I edutate people. All right. Boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew. So for the color of the actual text in the editor, we're just going to have it be sort of a light gray, which is just there we go. And then the background color is going to be this very specific one. I'm going to copy and paste it because I'm not going to be able to type it properly. It's that kind of a darkish slatey gray. And then the border is going to put a border around the box. So 1 pixel, solid, and then essentially the React blue. I like the way that looks. So React blue. The padding is going to be 1 rem just for the interior contents. And the border radius is going to be 5 pixels. All right, pop quiz. What does border radius do? What does that do? Ah, I spoiled it. Hey, Dan can code. Good to see you. Yeah, it does corners, right? It radiates borders, rounds your corners. Yeah, welcome to the stream, Hellbeat, coming in with the right answer. Good job. Yes, border radius rounds them corners. Pop quiz, hot shot. Yeah. So now we're getting there, right? We're looking better. We're still not quite there though. The button's still wonky. These are different sizes. And this is still resizable. And we don't want that. So in the finished version, we want them both to be the same size. You shouldn't be able to resize this text box at all. We want it to just be a fixed size, the same as the other one. So, but we're getting there. Now let's actually let's edit each of those boxes individually. So we're going to do the editor input. Feel Smith says, I actually finished my README a few hours ago. I asked myself, what is the opposite of round corners? I chose pointy. Yeah, there you go. I think they're technically called squared corners. When they have, the right angles, they're called square corners or squared corners. But I like pointy. That's pretty good. Anything button related is Anki for interviews. Exactly. All right, so the editor input box itself, we're going to essentially attach this to a specific column. Oops. Grid column. 1, 2. Grid row is going to be 2 of 3. So essentially what we're saying here is we want this in the left column, we want it in the second row, and then we can set the resize property to none, so they can't drag it, and then we're going to set the font size to 1 rem. Okay, so now we're getting better. We've got it fixed into a particular column. Now, if you were wanting to make this mobile friendly, you maybe wouldn't, affix it in this way. You might have a separate configuration for mobile that would, stack the two instead of, it would change the column layout so that it puts everything in one column and then puts the input box in the second row, and then the output box in the third row, the button in the fourth row. So you could just have two different layouts for mobile. Hey, Ellen, good to see you. We're doing CSS, like seeing a unicorn. So editor input, and then next up is the Markdown preview. Hey, Red Carpet, good to see you. We're doing CSS right now. We finished building our project, and now we're just styling it with some CSS. The project itself, you can do exclamation point. Oh, thank you for the hydrate.
Red Group official just redeemed hydrate.
So you can do exclamation point project for a link to the GitHub repo where you can see the full code. We used React and TypeScript to build a Markdown preview tool. So here's the finished version. Essentially, you can put Markdown or HTML on the left side, and then on the right side, you can get a full preview of what it will look like when it's fully styled. Again, you can also do HTML tags, and we're sanitizing that using DOM Purify, and we're doing the Markdown using the Marked package. Do a CSS for me, yeah. All right, so Markdown preview, that's going to be in, I'm going to copy and paste this stuff here. That's going to be in grid column 2. And grid row 2. So they're going to be on the same row. Overflow is going to be auto. We're also going to want to word wrap this because since it's not a text box, it's just going to overflow otherwise. But we want to do word wrap on break word and then overflow wrap also on break word. So what that's going to do is it's going to make the text wrap if it hits the edge. So for example, a text box will do that automatically because that's just how text boxes are. But if we want this to happen inside of our output box, we have to trigger that word wrap property. What am I drinking? Tequila? No, I'm drinking tea. I'm drinking tea in my favorite mug. It's great. I love it. Yes. Hey, Jim. We're having fun with TypeScript, Vite, React, and Markdown today. That's a grown up word, I know. Still my favorite mug, though. Yeah, now I'm actually wondering if I did that wrong. Let me try this. Like I say, I'm new to grid. So if I do this and I do 2, 2, save that. Okay, yeah, I guess it didn't matter. I guess it just automatically corrected to be correct. Yeah, okay. Well, I'll fix it anyway. All right. Preview, and then now what we want to do is we want to assign just a little bit of extra styling. I don't know if this is particularly exactly necessary, but I did have a little bit of trouble with stuff inside of the output box not behaving right. So I added a little extra explicit margin to it. So essentially what this is doing is it's targeting everything inside of the output box, so any child elements, and it's putting margin and padding on it. Or it's removing margin and padding, sorry. Yeah, I was having some issues, some alignment issues with some stuff. So did that. Been pretty good. We get the mug reveal. I know. No fanfare or anything. That's, it's a CSS type of day. You never know what's going to happen. Every dinosaur mug. All right. Now the last thing, the last major element we're going to style is our export button. To finally get it aligned properly at long last. So grid column, I think it looks like I messed this one up too. So grid column is going to be 1, 3. Grid row going to be, yeah, I think well, we'll try this. We'll do 3, 3. We'll see what happens there. I think I got a little confused in my grid. I said I'm new to this. It worked anyway. I'm glad it's forgiving. We'll have some padding there. So padding, as a reminder, goes inside the element. Our cursor is going to be pointer. Oops. It'll be self-justified. Width will be auto. Just want it to size itself so it fits, all the text we're putting inside of it. I did set a max width because I was having some issues with it, but you may not need this. I think I fixed that issue, but we'll put it in there anyway. Background color is going to be that React color from before, this one here. The color of the stuff inside of it, or the text, is going to be the 232A. Border is going to be none, because we're modern, and modern stuff doesn't have borders apparently, ever. Border radius, we're going to have nice rounded corners. Although apparently it seems like the current style for stuff is like it used to be for the longest time, stuff everything had rounded corners, and now like modern style is like, no, we don't round corners anymore. I don't know. Have you noticed that? Seems like we're shifting back toward pointy corners. Font family, it's going to be sans serif. And we're going to have a little bit of a transition because we're going to add a hover effect here so that when you hover over the button, it has a certain shading. So we're going to have a little transition. Background color, 0.2 seconds, and ease into it. No, iOS isn't cool anymore. Like brutalism. 4 pixels rounded. Yeah, just a little bit of rounding, not a lot. Rounded corners came from iOS styling cues. Now iOS isn't cool anymore. Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. That explains some stuff. It looks better. All right, save this, and we're getting there. It's looking better, right? We still got some funky stuff going on with the sizing here, but now our button is centered. It's got the right formatting, little round corners. All right, and we're going to do export button hover. Hover, there we go. So when we hover over it, we want to do background color is going to be slightly darker. And again, I'm going to copy and paste this. All right, and we'll save that. And now what I want to do is I add a little bit of fanciness for like the scroll bar. So we can see that like the scroll bar looks, like a normal scroll bar. Well, if we want to get super fancy, I added a little bit of a custom scroll bar, purely optional. I'm actually just going to copy and paste this in from the repo. Save that. And there we go. Now we can see that our scroll bar is a lovely blue. It's got rounded corners and, looks super modern and neat. Okay, this still isn't quite sitting properly, so I'm gonna have to figure out what's going on with this. CSS isn't quite working. In the finished version, this box sticks properly here. So I'm missing something in the formatting for this box specifically, I think. Love the Voltron line. I do too. Yes. So must be missing some CSS there. That's okay. All right, so our scroll bars are nice and pretty. Let me go back up here to the input box, see what I missed. I'll just copy it in from the repo. Oh yeah, I'll give you the Voltron line link if you want it. See that? Oh, I just needed to refresh it. Okay, that's all I had to do. That fixed it. All right. Sometimes you got to do that. Sometimes a little refresh will fix it. But yeah, it's fixed now. Hooray! Looks like we're working, and I will get you that Voltron Lion link. Let me see. I've got it actually on my notes here. This came from the Voltron wiki, so the boxes in the finished one look like they're different heights. Uh, no, that's an illusion because what text? So watch when I click away from the text box. So here they're equal, but then as soon as I click into the text box, it puts an automatic like focus border on it, and that's the only reason. So it's an illusion. Mind free, yeah. All right, so here's the link to that Voltron lion. Oops, there we go. Voltron lion. There you go. Dan says, I tried browser sync recently to get some auto refresh working, was developing a WordPress theme. Yeah, I think there's ways to, mitigate that issue with the reload. It just happens. It seems to just happen sometimes. When in doubt, just refresh it out and that'll probably fix the problem. Yeah, exactly. Have you tried turning it off then on again? Exactly. If it works for the IT crowd, it works for me. All right, so let's double confirm that everything's working. I've got my little page of Markdown here. I'll just paste it in. Hey, we're working. We're cooking. Let's export it. We're working. We're cooking. Open it up. Got my Markdown. We are golden. All right. I think we're good. We did it. Go team. All right. What does export as Markdown do? It creates a Markdown file and then it downloads it onto your machine. So you can open it in VS Code. So I went kind of fast there, but when I clicked the button, it put it in my downloads, and then I clicked on it, and I was able to then open that. I already closed it, but I was able to then open that downloaded file inside of VS Code because it's on my machine now. What did that do? Transition background color. So essentially, when I hover over the button, so you see how the color changes just a little bit. So we just created an animation there, like or a transition um, on the hover to fade the background color in and out to the hover color. So just to instead of just like flicking straight to the color on hover, it does a transition instead, eases into it. Yeah. Inner margin for text area not working. The text is right next to the border. Yeah, so you might be missing a padding. That's actually not a margin, that would be padding. So you check your padding against the repo and make sure that you put everything in for that. Afro says, are you parsing the Markdown manual or using a library? We are using the Marked library. Let's see. Oh, here. I'll give you the link to it. It's actually really nice. I like it a lot. Except they don't have dark mode, so it burns my retinas every time I look at their website. But there you go. Sometimes cursing it and then re-blessing it works. Exactly. But yeah, we did it. Yeah, I would not want to parse the markdown. I would not want to parse the markdown myself, I think, because there's a lot of different ways. There's markdown can get really complex, especially when you look at the advanced syntax for markdown. So if we go here and you look at all the like the advanced things you could do, I wouldn't want to parse that myself because I'm sure I'd miss something or do it wrong. When I was an electrician, I was taught if you can't fix it with a hammer, you got yourself an electrical problem. I like that. Yeah, so Gubrick, if you're still having trouble, look at compare the package.json of your project against the package.json in the repo. So go to the GitHub repo, go into the Markdown checker folder. So not this one, not this one. This is not the right one. Go into the Markdown checker folder, and then at the root of that folder, go into the package.json, and you should see all these dependencies there. So that's where you should be installing everything. I think that's not where you were installing stuff. But you can see that in the repo and, and then do the catch up from there. You could even just copy the package.json and put it in your project, in the right location and then do an npm install and get everything installed properly. But which package.json file? There's two. There's one here, and there's one here. This is the one where everything should be installed. What is this DOM purify? What type of unorthodox code are you writing? Well, we're essentially writing directly to the DOM, which is very dangerous. We're using the dangerously or the set inner HTML property, which is called dangerously set inner HTML in React, to essentially put the processed markdown directly into the DOM as HTML. So it just shows up in the output box as literal HTML tags. So if you were to run this application and do an inspect on the application itself, you would just see a bunch of HTML tags. So like right here, if I do an inspect on this, we can see that inside of here, it's literally just a bunch of HTML with strong tags, italic tags, ULs, LIs, that kind of thing. It's processed markdown as HTML. So we're doing that. What we're doing is we're inserting it directly into the DOM. And so if we're going to do that, it's dangerous. So we want to sanitize it first. So the DOM Purify library is taking this input that's been processed as markdown and then sanitizing it and taking out anything malicious. Yes, exactly. Purify your code in the waters of Lake Minnetonka. Yep. Yeah, exactly. Anytime you're doing something with writing directly to the DOM or, to a database or whatever from a user submission, you want to sanitize it in some way. In this case, we're using DOM Purify to literally take this HTML, strip out anything that could be used for cross-site scripting before we display it here in the output. Gubrick, I don't think you can share screen images in chat. I'm sorry. Don't think so. You could always put your code up on GitHub, like put your code up on GitHub as a repo, and then have other folks look at it from there. That would be the way I would do it. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and look for a raid target. I do have to cut it kind of right at 6 p.m. I told my neighbor I would go stop by her house. She called me earlier. She's fine. She's okay. But she needs me to help her with something. So I told her I would stop by at 6. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to get a window going here. Oh, thank you so much, Bridge Above. Wow, thank you so much for the sub. I really appreciate it. My alerts are a little janky right now, so subs don't always show up, but I do see your sub notified by Moobot. Thank you so much, Bridge Above. Really appreciate that. Very, very kind of you. Need help killing this bottle of wine. Oh, I'm glad you liked it, Closehurst. Yes. All right. If you have any, as always, if you have any suggestions for someone to rate, please shout them out while I get this stuff organized over here. My stream graphics are so snazzy. I know. I paid money for these. Wild, right? I paid money for my stream graphics. I do like it though. I think they look nice. I was torn between this and another one. I might still try out the other one, but I think this looks pretty good. I'm a pro, kind of semi-pro. I know I paid money for a thing. I don't advocate for you guys to pay money for anything, but I chose to pay money. Ooh, we got a lot of choices today. I'm so excited because I actually ended my stream on time. We actually have like a lot of people to choose from today, and it's a lot of bangers, folks. We have got CM Griffin. We have got Juicebox Hero. Actually, I think we need to raid them. They raided me a couple weeks ago. We need to return the favor. We've got Coder Will Chan. We've got Manny Moki, but we gotta give it up for the Juicebox. They're fantastic. If you've never been on one of their streams before, they're a hoot. They're super fun and also super nice. They're just a great person. And they rated me a couple weeks ago. I love them a lot. Let's go show them some love. Please stick around for them because they're a lot of fun. And they have a game that you can play while you're watching their stream, like hit a little avatar on a trampoline. It's super fun. I hope they still have that game. A lot of fun. Till next time. No worries, Leo. Thanks for coming. Game Pass. Yeah, it's the game. Yeah. It's the game that they have. All right, here we go. Raid starting now. See you all next week. Have a great one. Talk to you later. Yes, I have all the old classes. They're on my YouTube channel. If you want to check out my archive, I've got literally every stream I have ever done on my YouTube archive. Exclamation point YouTube in chat. Raid is starting now. All right, raid is going now. Have a great week. See you later.